Hello, oboists. I was asked to record one of my coaching demo videos for the WBIC Oboe Excerpts, so here we go. This begins with a very straightforward chromatic scale. Still, it never hurts to review fundamentals to make sure that we are playing with accuracy and not reinforcing sloppy habits. Along those lines, the first thing I recommend is to review an octave key chart, or better yet, make your own. Here's mine for inspiration. I've made some markings in the music to make sure it is crystal clear how to utilize our octave keys correctly. On a C sharp in the second measure, we will use our half hole. Be sure to just move the knuckle of your first finger on your left hand so we keep our finger movements efficient and quick without dithering. I also think about sliding the pad of that first finger just a tiny bit to make sure that the entire hole is uncovered. This will also help us when we play English horn, by the way. The E in the third measure is when we close the half hole and at the exact same time put our left thumb down on the first octave key. Drill this so that these movements are instantaneous and perfectly coordinated. We don't want glitches. The goal is to slow these movements down and focus on them so much at the beginning that you never have to think about them again and they become automatic. So invest that time now as a gift to your future self so that you can become totally free and relaxed with your playing by having a solid and glitch-free technique. Also, in the third measure, you will add your second octave key or side key on the high A. When you get to the half rest at the end of the line, make sure that your inner counting voice shouts out 3, 4, and exhale, inhale on those beats. Breathe through your mouth only, so that way your breathing will be more discreet and we won't hear your sniffs. Also, our lip muscles always appreciate a little break, even if it's only for an instant. This will also help us to release any tension we may have and think about resetting our embouchure in a more relaxed way when we begin the second line. After all, the oboe is a wind instrument and not a mouth vice instrument. I've also noted your octave key markings for your descent. So really focus on doing all of that correctly. When you listen back to your practice recordings, make sure that your sound is even throughout your range and that your note lengths are symmetrical. If 96 feels too hurried for you right now, that's okay. Take it at a tempo where you can play accurately and not be stressed out. Musicians generally need to focus on long-term goals, so it is important to not play at tempos that are too fast for you right now, as you don't want to normalize playing with sloppy facility or with tension that could create long-term playing discomfort. I'll do a metronome check and then I'll demo. I'll do something with the last measure so that no one is tempted to try to pass this off as their own recording. The minor etude is a fun and sassy little exercise that gives you an opportunity to show off your dynamic range, different articulations, and clean technique. Etudes like this are why we need to be proficient with all of our extended major minor scales and arpeggios played with a variety of articulations. If you are not doing these types of exercises, do yourself a favor and start. After all, you either have control of your instrument or it's going to boss you around. So the first thing I do when I prepare any music is to study it to see if I need to mark anything in, especially any oboistic fingering, such as left E flats, forked Fs, or left Fs if your oboe has that key. In the fourth measure, I wrote a reminder to myself that the dynamic suddenly changes from forte to piano. As you can see, I marked that by using the abbreviation for the Italian word subito, which means suddenly or immediately. The exact same thing happens in the next line. Speaking of the next line, in the third measure of the second line, I went ahead and wrote a reminder that the F in the third measure is a natural, since it was sharped in the previous measure. That way I won't have to overthink it when I record. We want that recording process to be as easy and as stress-free as possible. So besides scheduling more time than we think we'll possibly need to do this recording, marking everything in will also help to keep us from having to do retakes because of silly mishaps that could have easily been avoided with just a minute or two of detail work. Also, another quick note about recording is for you to find the room where you sound your very best and try not to point the oboe directly at the mic when you play. I, of course, am breaking both of those rules by recording these in my home teaching studio and playing directly at you, but I want you to sound better when you record. I'm also just using my cell phone on my stand, so maybe a better recording setup would be advisable. The last thing I wrote in was a couple of no-breath reminders, and those are the dashed lines I wrote after the quarter notes between measures 2 and 3 and measures 10 and 11, where some may be inclined to take a breath. However, we want to display longer phrases, show off our long tones. A quick tip about playing accents is that you can emphasize them by putting a space before and after the accented notes whenever the markings allow. After I've done my detail work, I'll play the coordinating scales for this etude, F major and D harmonic minor. The harmonic means that the seventh note, C, is raised a half step to C sharp, both ascending and descending. I'll also do a round of arpeggios in those keys, and my articulation style for the scales and arpeggios will be jauntily tongued with some accents here and there to mimic the style characteristics in this etude. So now I'll do a metronome check and I'll play this etude for you. Again, if you need to take it slower, that's fine, but still play it with personality and style. I'll do something with the last measure to identify it as my recording. So we'll put the metronome on 104. Now you get to show off your softer, lyrical side in this lovely song. If you play with vibrato, this would be the perfect time to show off that skill. If you don't yet, consider this incentive to start, and hopefully you have a private teacher you can work with to help you achieve that goal. Either way, emulating great singers is always recommended. From the very first lesson I have with a student, I give them a lesson folder, and in it I include a reading and listening guide. To prepare for this excerpt, I recommend going to YouTube and finding the 1940 recording from the MGM Studio Orchestra featuring Judy Garland. This is from the movie Little Nellie Kelly. So entering that in a search bar will help you to get to this more obscure recording, since she also did a more produced version in 1955 for Capitol Records. Nothing wrong with that arrangement, but sometimes simple and straightforward is best and can have even more emotional impact. Bing Crosby's 1941 version on a Decca label, later re-released by Geffen Records, is also highly, highly recommended. It's also important that you sing it, and I don't just mean through your oboe. I'm going to hold up the lyrics for you and take a few minutes to sing it through. Notice where you breathe and immerse yourself in what the lyrics are saying. You don't need to sing it in the same key as the excerpt, by the way. Just find the range that suits your voice best. Musicians need to be able to balance their musicality and artistry along with the engineering side of our craft. So now we go in with our pencil and mark in those things we talked about earlier in the minor etude. Here are my markings for inspiration. In measure 12, it is crucial to play those repeated C's with what I call musical motion. I almost never want to play repeated notes at the same dynamic level. I either want to pull the audience along with me to the next moment or pull away by doing a diminuendo. In this case, we are definitely leaning towards that soaring high A. Make sure that it sounds rich and full. Don't back away from it. We'll want to use plenty of rubato throughout, and here's a reminder on what that means. The rubato here is not only about stretching some note lengths here and there, as I did in another coaching video with the Brahms Violin Concerto slow movement, but in this case it's about having more free expression with the tempo throughout. Also, be sure to flow gracefully through those grace notes. You don't want to always accent them. Play the F major extended scale slowly and slurred, listening carefully for your intonation. Then do some gentle, slow stretches and breathe as you channel the lyrics. One last thing to think about before you play is that one of the wonderful things about this excerpt is that you can personalize it how you want, not only with how you played expressively, but in how you may add dynamics to your performance. Think of the written music as kind of a blank canvas and add your own musical touches. What I'm going to play is just one way, not necessarily your way. I'll change something up slightly and simply near the end to identify it as my recording. So, I'll put a link to the music in the description and also leave my email address so you can contact me directly to let me know how you did with your recording. These videos are completely free to you, so please leave a comment to let me know that you watched it, and subscribe to my channel for other teaching videos and performances. Happy playing!